Welcome back to Defending Utah Radio. This week we are joined by Ryan Bundy, Ammon's brother, Ryan Bundy, who's also just announced his candidacy to run for governor in the state of Nevada. And we're just really excited to be able to have him talk about the background, what led to kind of him and his brother and his father being in the spotlight, and what's been going on, the encroachments against their family by the federal government.
And we were talking about the contract law and what his...
Zion, dear Zion, home of the free.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you by the Defending Utah Liberty Store, the new book, The United States Constitution Made Easy, by Lonnie D. Crockett, Ph.D., Anderson Accounting, Trust Plumbing, Higher Calling Firearms, Mini Zoo Comes to You, American Appliance, The Editor Lady, Shem Financial Services, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith.
Well, my name is Ryan Bundy. I'm the son of Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy. I was born and raised here in Nevada. I did live in Utah for a time. I have a wife and 8 children, and we've had a good life. But anyway, the situation here in Nevada was that our ranch, we've been here for a very long time. My ancestors moved into this valley by being called as missionaries to come here for the church, as the church settled a lot of the communities and of course all across Utah and Nevada and Colorado, Arizona, Mexico, even down into Old Mexico. Yes, it was. And a lot of this, a little bit on both sides of that, but they came here to this community and began this community on January 7th, 1877. So that's 141 years ago. And some of those first pioneers that came into that valley are my ancestors. And when they came here, of course, they began to utilize the land and the resources. And by so doing, they established rights. Rights that are based upon prior appropriation, which means the first ones there, establish the rights first. And those who come later may establish rights also, but they're later in priority. And our water laws, both in Utah and Nevada, and probably some of the other western states, are based upon that premise that those who have the oldest priority have the strongest right. And so the water rights and the grazing rights are attached. The land, to graze cattle is absolutely worthless without water. And if you have water out on the ranges, cannot be really used for anything else. That water is more or less useless without being able to utilize the feed. So the grazing and the water rights out on the rangeland anyway go hand in hand and are tied together. My pioneer ancestors settled here. They began to use the land, the resources, the water, the feed, the forage, and established a right to be here. And those rights are protected by state laws in Nevada, and they are real. They're real property. Those grazing rights can be used as collateral for a loan at a bank. The bank recognizes those as they can be bought, sold, traded, inherited, and on down the generations. And of course that is how we now have those rights, is because we have either purchased or inherited the rights from those original pioneers on down to where we now own them. Now, the Bureau of Land Management, the federal government, does not want to recognize that those rights exist. The interesting thing is that the various acts of Congress dealing with land use all recognize those rights. Even right down to FLPMA, Even FLTMA recognizes those rights exist. However, the Bureau of Land Management does not want to admit that they exist. And so they say that the ranchers have no rights upon the land and that they own the land and that they, the BLM, that the federal government owns the land, and that the ranchers are only lessees. They're only, well, and that's the problem. The Constitution of the United States only allows the federal government to own land if they have, within the admitted state of the Union, if they have got consent from the state legislature to purchase that land, and then that land must only be used for military bases, arsenals, dockyards, magazines, and other needful buildings. And so, yeah, that is a good question. Where did they purchase it from? How did they come to have ownership in that? And therein lies the crux of the whole issue of 2014, because the federal government is claiming ownership and control over this land through, conquest, acquisition, in the Mexican-American War, and then, of course, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, wherein they acquired or, took in these lands into the Union. However, they have negated and forgot the equal footing doctrine of the states, that all states that enter in the Union are to be entered in upon equal footing with the original 13 states. And yeah, now this land in Nevada came into the Union in 1864, and my ancestors didn't come here until 1877, so we were a little behind that. But regardless, it was a state. This was the state of Nevada, Nevada state, no longer a territory. See, now, going back to where I was coming from, even in these court orders that they use to, as supposed authority to decimate, work us under despotism and try to take away our ranch and our rights and our resources, they're using the authority of Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution, which is territorial law. And so they're claiming that Nevada is a territory. And they're doing the same thing all across the western states. They're claiming that this land is territory and that they have authority over this land by territorial law. Which you are right, and that is the very thing my father's been trying to teach people for quite a few years now, is that the only obligation and the only authority that the Bureau of Land Management has over a rancher is in the terms and conditions of the contracts that the ranchers voluntarily sign. And according to the Constitution, that we as men, as people of the United States, we have the right to contract. Now, if we make a contract, however, now we're obligated to abide by the terms and conditions of that contract because we have voluntarily entered into it. Now, if we do not voluntarily enter into a contract, then they cannot force us into contract because that would be slavery, involuntary servitude.
Okay, Ryan, we got to hold right there because we have a hard break. The computer just throws in the commercials whenever it wants to. So we're going to hold that thought and come back from this break. We'll be right back.
Defending Utah knows how to fix that. It's called nullification. To find out more, stop by our office and pick up your pamphlet on nullification today. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
Welcome back to Defending Utah Radio. This week we are joined by Ryan Bundy, Ammon's brother, Ryan Bundy, who's also just announced his candidacy to run for governor in the state of Nevada. And we're just really excited to be able to have him talk about the background, what led to kind of him and his brother and his father being in the spotlight, and what's been going on, the encroachments against their family by the federal government.
And we were talking about the contract law and what his father was doing.
Right.
That's kind of where we left off.
Before we were rudely cut off by our hard break. And we apologize about that, Ryan. Thanks for being with us today.
All right, so back to contracts. And again, the Constitution supports and recognizes the people's right to contract.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when we do make contracts, we, that is our right to be able to contract with whomever for whatever we wish. But if we make a contract, now we are legally bound to abide by the terms and conditions of that contract. Now, the federal government knows this. They understand the Constitution more than people want to give them credit for. The problem is they use it to their advantage rather than for the protection of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this way, they are contracting with the ranchers, and the ranchers are perhaps ignorantly, in fact, completely, it's ignorance. They don't know better. But either way, they are making a contract, and now they are obligated to abide by the terms and the conditions of that contract. Now, one of the parameters of a contract is that it's mutually agreed upon and that it's mutually beneficial. There's 8 different aspects to the contract, and signing under duress or under ignorance would create a situation where those contracts could be voided. However, again, with the ignorance of people not understanding contracts, and they make them enter into them, and now they're obligated to abide by them. And whereas the ranchers are voluntarily signing them, if they were coerced into signing them, then they could fall under the protection of the 13th Amendment, which states that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall be had within the United States except to a person who has been duly convicted of a crime. And so slavery is legal in America for those who have been duly convicted of crimes. However, involuntary association is involuntary servitude. And so if a man is forced into something, then that is slavery.
Right.
And that's illegal according to the supreme law of the land. However, if men enter into these contracts voluntarily, now that's no longer slavery. That's a voluntary situation. And so what my father has done, and he has learned this years ago and has tried to teach people this, that you don't enter those contracts. The only way that the Bureau of Land Management or federal government, the other agencies have control over you is if you enter contracts with them. And then you're obligated to abide by those contracts. Otherwise, people in America are to be free to do whatever they wish so long as their actions are not intentionally doing damage to another's life, liberty, or property. So men, when we talk about freedom and say America is free, what does that mean? That means that we're supposed to be able to do whatever we want. We have the right to pursue happiness in our own means and methods, so long as we are not inhibiting or doing damage to another man's life, liberty, or property. So back to our rights, back to our situation here on the Bundy Ranch in 2014. Clear back in 1993, my father recognized this contract issue. He could see that the Bureau of Land Management had no intentions to manage the land, but to destroy the ranchers in the area. And the evidence of that is clear, because in Clark County, Nevada alone, there were 53 ranchers, and now there is one. And why is there only one? And that is my father. And the only reason he's here is because he said, no, I don't need your management services. I'm not going to sign a contract with you. And because he does not have a contract with them, he is continuing to graze and run cattle on this land based upon his rights that we began discussing, that he's inherited or purchased from pioneer ancestors, and that is protected by state law.
Right.
Okay, so of course the federal government does not want to be challenged. They don't like the competition, whatever they want to call it. They've used their laws, I shouldn't say laws, that's an improper term. They've used their codes.
Pretend statute.
Their policies, yes. and then they have taken that. They use their law enforcement, supposedly. They use their judges. In other words, the federal system, which is supposed to be broken up, to where there's layers and, branches of government, they've combined all of that to the point where there's just a one power system. And of course, you can't win in federal court because of that. And so whenever anyone challenges what's going on and it ends up in federal court with their judges and their statutes, well, everybody just loses.
Right.
And, same thing happened in our situation where, they took these questions to a federal judge, and the federal judge rules against us and issues a court order, and then they're like, they took 20 years. They didn't enforce the court orders, but then, environmental activist groups start pressing them to the point where they now they're going to act because of the pressure from the environmental groups, and so they move to take away our cattle. Now they use the excuse that we owed them back grazing fees because we haven't paid them for the last 20 years. Well, we didn't owe any.
You didn't have a contract with them. How could you?
That's right. Exactly. We had no contract. They had no right to bill because we had no agreement. You can't, if you're doing business with someone, well, you have an agreement. If you're not doing business with someone, they have no right to bill you.
Right.
Verizon's not going to send you a bill if you're with AT&T.
Wouldn't it be great if I could just walk around my neighborhood and just start invoicing people for no reason?
For living in their house?
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be surprised. They may just pay it. Because
I might get a 20% response. Or
who knows how much you get. Of course, then, that's fraud. Well, that's exactly what's going on here. The Bureau of Land Management is claiming that they have the right to bill us when we have no contract with them, and they have no authority to force us into involuntary servitude, and yet they want to claim that they have that right. And so that's the basis of the court orders. And so based upon these fraudulent court orders signed by a district judge, then we've always just said, hey, your court orders mean nothing. They're no good. They're invalid because of all these things we've just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And because we don't just willingly comply, they have not been able to do anything. And so finally they decided they're going to put together a military force, and they're going to come and destroy us. And that was their intentions. And we did discover, through reading all the discovery information that we had for the case, particularly in their operation plan, that it was their design to create a situation in where we would react so that our reaction would then they would twist that or make it look as though we were attacking them, and therefore they would have the right or be justified in the public's eye to take us out militarily.
They attempted to entrap you.
And then alternatively, they intended to entrap us into a situation where they could prosecute us and put us in prison.
Right.
So their design was to kill us, either by the barrel of the gun or behind steel bars and concrete doors, concrete walls. Okay, they wanted us dead. They wanted us off the land. They wanted us gone. Now, back to the amounts that they said that supposedly we owed them. By their calculations, we supposedly owed them like $285,000. Well, even if you round that up to $300,000, that doesn't sound very good, to the public. And so the media started to say we owed them $1 million. Well, that just happened overnight, out of the blue.
So they made that up out of whole cloth. There was no validity to that claim at all.
There's not. Okay.
Not even in their contract law. Right.
Not even by their calculations. Okay, so by their calculations, it was only, like I said, it wasn't even 285. It was only like 282 and something odd, $100, whatever. Okay, so, but all of a sudden it turned into $1 million in the media. So for $1 million, they assembled, a military base, high-tech communications, all these surveillance. They had drones. They had Apache helicopter ready to deploy. They had 4 other helicopters they were using. They were, of course, the staff. And I mean, geez, this was huge. They had the MRAPs, the, full military tactical gear. They had, contract cowboys to come and do the work. I understood. I never did get an official number, but I was told from some very good sources that they were allocated $6 million to operate that, to fund that operation.
$6 million to collect a fraudulent $250,000 past due, quote unquote past due bill. That's ridiculous by any standard.
And we could say it's a lot of people say, well, that's government math and intelligence, but it's more than that. It actually was worth more than $6 million to somebody, right? The land was ultimately.
Well, yeah, and let me tell you further on. Now that we've gone to these cases in Oregon, the trials, and also the trial in Nevada, I do know that in Oregon, the government, and I don't know who gets the money or who allocates the money, whether it's the judge in the court or the prosecutors, or I don't know exactly who handles it. But I know that they were allocated $100 million to conduct our trials in Oregon. And that I hear down here in Nevada that they were allocated $150 million down here.
Holy smokes.
Okay, so if you add all of those up, that's $256 million that they have allocated to destroy the Bundy family.
Wow. Well, we're about a minute away from the next break, and then we've only got one segment left. And so I want to be able to kind of get into what we're working on now, just kind of prepare when we get back from the break. We want to just talk about, just real quick, like a minute or two, about your time in prison and the abuse that was there, and then what's that led now to your desire to run for governor of Nevada. And then we'd like to, be able to have our listeners know what they can do. Even though we're in different states, I think this is essential that, if Nevada can come along to electing somebody as freedom-oriented as you, that can be a big push towards moving us towards doing something like that here in Utah. So that's why we're talking about it.
The whole Deseret region.
The whole Deseret region, exactly. And so it's really important for people to understand your story, the abuse that's happened to you, over $250 million, like you said, to be able to do that. And so if you can hold on to the break, Ryan, we'll talk about that, and we'll get into those things. So appreciate it. And we've been talking with I said it again, Ryan Bundy, candidate for governor in Nevada. And this is the Defending Utah radio program. Find out more about what we do in Defending Utah. Go to defendingutah.org. We have our materials. We've got books. We talked about how is the international conspiracy implementing its program here in Utah. We have our book, highly acclaimed book, Secret Combinations, Utah's Secret Combinations, available at defendingutah.org.
Tired of bureaucrats and tyrannical government? Defending Utah knows how to fix that. It's called nullification. To find out more, stop by our office and pick up your pamphlet on nullification today. defendingutah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
Welcome back to Defending Utah Radio. We are on today with Ryan Bundy, who's also just announced recently his run for governor of the state of Nevada. Thanks for being with us today, Ryan.
Well, thank you for having me.
We've also got a couple of callers we wanted to get into, but I want to just real quick, maybe you can take 60 seconds to 2 minutes to talk about what happened to you in prison after you were arrested after the events in Nevada.
You're going to have me cram 2 years into 60
I know, it's horrible. 2 years. It's insane that you were in prison held without bail. Child molesters get out on bail, but you were in prison because without bail, without being convicted for 2 years.
Well, their worst enemies are political prisoners. They said in our detention hearings for Ammon and I, the prosecutor said that we were the most dangerous people that he had ever prosecuted in his life.
Wow.
Okay, the most dangerous. Now, I guess he's right. He is right. We are the most dangerous to that establishment tyranny, and they can't have that. We're not dangerous to the people. We're dangerous to their system. So,
yeah. So you were heavily abused while in prison as well. Tell us about that.
Well, numerous times. I mean, put it this way. Of the 2 years, I probably spent nearly a year of that in solitary confinement because I didn't, comply with their every wish and demand and, command. And that alone is cruel and unusual, to be placed in a cell that, that it's about the size of your normal household bathroom. And I would be in those cells for months without it, without being able to see outside or go out at all. That's just solitary confinement. And that is very hard on the soul, very hard on the mind, very hard on the body. Your muscles, you just become weak and there's, granted you can exercise on the floor, but I wasn't the best and motivated to be able to do that. I did most of my time reading and studying and sleeping. Force yourself to sleep just to pass the time. Like I said, it's very hard on the mind.
Right.
Besides the physical abuse that they would impose upon you from time to time, strip searches. Of course, we put a stop to that. Would fight that. That's one of the reasons we were in the solitary for so long, is we just simply would not strip for them any longer.
Yeah, if they're going to molest you, make them do it yourself. Don't let them act like you're complying with them. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, or like, hey, we're not going to resist, but we're not going to do it for you. You got a job to do, you do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do your work for you. You're going to strip me, then get after it, but I'm not going to help you.
Well, Ryan, we've got a couple of callers real quick we want to get to, and then let you kind of get into your push for running for governor in Nevada. On line 4, we've got Eagle from Southern Utah. You're on the Defending Utah radio program with Ryan Bundy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. You being as closely related to Mike Levitt as you are, why don't you just go to him? He can straighten it out. He's got a lot of contacts in the federal government.
Is Mike? Well, I haven't talked to Mike in a lot of years. I do know him personally.
I hope there's not a family split there.
Well, he comes down through the line of Dudley Levitt, and on my grandmother's side, yes, I'm related to that same line, so we are distant cousins. But I'm not looking to the federal government, regardless of who's in what position, to fix these problems. I'm going to stand upon the rights established by the Constitution, not some family favoritism.
Especially if you haven't really been that close to him in a lot of years, like you said.
Well, I haven't. I know his father. I've done some work with him. And his father. I've done a little bit of business directly with Mike before he was governor. I've only seen him once. I think only once since he was governor. But so in other words, I don't have a lot of association.
Yeah.
But
appreciate that. Let's go to our next caller, Ray. You're on the Defending Utah radio program with Ryan Bundy.
Yes, Ryan, this is a real honor. And my gift is to help people see things. And there's 3 points that it's imperative that I make right now. Now, the Eagle that just called up, yesterday, the day before yesterday, he made a wisecrack to Brian Hyde. And Eagle is very knowledgeable with politics, and also I forgot his name. Right, slipped my mind. Randy. But they don't understand what's going on here. People still believe the news and the slanderous way they treated you and your family, and they don't get what's going on here. I mean, you are not some radical nut. You know, people have to open up their eyes and see really what's going on here. And you know, the wisecrack that the Eagle made last night is that you owed money. Well, you already explained that. You did not owe money, but people still can't see it. I mean, it's a very complicated issue. But I think the 3 points I need to make to the listeners is you use the word despot. Now, we don't use that very much. You know, they used to use it back at the Founding Fathers. You know, but a despot is a ruler who has total power and who often uses that power in cruel and unfair ways. Well, we are a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And the BLM, the FBI, Hillary Clinton, they have been acting like despots. They have changed America, and we're supposed to be self-ruled, a people of law, self-ruled. And the way they treated you, they went outside the law and twisted the law.
Hey, Ray, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we've got only a few minutes left. Can you, if you've got a question, or just kind of just wrap it up?
Oh, I do. Okay, I'll wrap it up then. In World War II, we did not steal the land from Germany or Japan. After we got rid of their dictators, we gave it back to the people. In America, we do not steal land like the BLM was trying to do to you. And so the last point is national parks. When the government, the only land they were supposed to own was national parks. Well, when they do get a national park, the people living on that land get to continue to live in that land generation after generation. Even though a national park was created around them, they keep their property rights. They weren't tried to kick off and abuse like you. That the federal government can, actually national parks.
Hey, Ray,
were
let me ask you this: where in the Constitution, did we the people give the government right to own and control national parks?
Nowhere. But see, I tell you the truth, I do like Yosemite and I do like Yellowstone, but we should leave it at that. I mean, do you know how much of Alaska the federal government has stolen from Alaska?
Well,
this
here's
is
the problem.
wrong.
If it's unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional.
Exactly.
You can't say I like this one and not the other one. And so here's the thing. It's okay to keep that land public, but it belongs to the public and the people of that state, not the federal government, not the union. Okay, and so it can still be a state park if the people of the state so choose, but there should no such thing as national parks.
I appreciate Ray calling in and making those points and defending a lot of what you said. I want to move on to, because we've just got a few minutes left, and then hopefully we can have you on again. We'd like to have you on as often as you'd like, Ryan, and talked about your run for governor of Nevada. Tell us about that.
Well, we have for years placed the governor, the county commissioners, the county sheriff, the state brand inspector. We've placed those men on notice and stating that we know that it's your job to protect our rights, our life, our liberty, our property, particularly in our case, our rights on this ranch. We expect you to do your duty, your job, and protect us. And over the years, the county sheriff has protected us to a large degree. That's why we've gone 20 years without such problems until lately.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't protected it sufficiently enough. And, of course, when the BLM come to attack us in 2014, they all just stepped back and said, we're going to let it happen. And so, we need to get this issue, this problem resolved finally, that the land and the resources belong to the people of the state and that does not belong to the federal government. We need that issue resolved.
Mm-hmm.
We need that protection to come. And I do not see any of the candidates that are running for Nevada governor, I don't believe that they will get the job done. And it's not just that one issue. I'm not just a one-key piano. there's lots of issues, but the other issues can all be resolved by following the principles of liberty, whether it be on state level or federal level or county level. You know, the government on whatever level, their only legitimate function is to aid the individual in claiming, using, and defending their rights, and to protect those that, to protect them in their rights. And of course, their first and foremost right, is the right to life, the right to live. And the government has no right to kill people.
At least without due process.
We can get into a whole narrative there, and I agree that there are circumstances where, defense and so forth, where a man has the right to protect his life, and with,
Ryan, we've got about a half a minute left. I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's obvious that you're the liberty candidate for governor in Nevada. And like you said, not just a land issue. How can our listeners help you out? Is there a website they can go to? Is there?
Yeah, we're still building a website, but there's a Twitter handle which is at Battleborn Bundy. Battleborn
Bundy on Twitter. Okay.
Yes, and then there's also a Facebook page which is Ryan Bundy for Nevada Governor.
Okay.
Facebook, and we're still working on the website.
But if you're on those two things on Twitter and Facebook, they'll know about the when the website comes live. We've been speaking with Ryan Bundy.
Do you have the domain for the website ready?
Memos to Mueller.
Ryan, is there not yet?
I don't have that. I don't have that information with me right before you yet. We're still working on it, but it'll be noted on
the Facebook and on Twitter. This is the Defending Utah radio program. We've been speaking with Ryan Bundy. We'll see you all next week. This Defending Utah program was brought to you by the Defending Utah Liberty Store, where you can buy, among other things, the United States Constitution Made Easy by Lonnie Crockett, Ph.D. It was also brought to you by Anderson Accounting, 801-255-0396. Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470. Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com. Mini Zoo comes to you, 801-414-5279. American Appliance, 801-254-2566. The Editor Lady at gmail.com. Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151. The Law Offices of Garrett T. Smith, 385-439-0247.